Hello there. We welcome you again to the daily briefing on KLAM and KCDV, Thursday, June 11th. Making our way through another week, Mayor Koplin is here to kind of provide some follow-up on yesterday's council meeting and talk a little bit about the increasing numbers around the state. And then after the visit with the mayor, I'll have some information from Parks and Rec on where they stand regarding being able to reopen some other facilities. So that's all on the way. These briefings are brought to you in the 1 p.m., 5 p.m., and 8 p.m. hours on the radio, and then archived for later re-listening or sharing with others at youtube.com/Cordova TV. So, Mayor Koplin, yesterday's city council meeting has come and gone. What do you think are the major takeaways?
It wasn't entirely unexpected. That the city went ahead and adopted the modifications to Mandate 10 that the state had made. So basically there's some new waivers for those entering from out of state and some modified requirements for those traveling in state. So if you leave your community for less than 5 days, if you're coming in from out of state and don't want to do the full 14-day quarantine, you can now do some testing before you fly and or after you land, and the state, local providers are offering free testing vouchers so you can test again in 7 to 14 days to make sure that you didn't actually contract something during flight. So negative before you fly and then didn't catch it on the way. So those are in place now, and it means to travel a little more freely. But then, of course, that also means that we may see a resulting uptick in cases.
Yeah, that's always a possibility. And actually, people coming to Cordova won't even need a free testing voucher, right? Because our testing's free anyway.
That's right. We have the free testing available in place. And as we saw yesterday, we're up to almost 700 tests applied locally. So that continues to be one of our best tools, and one of the reasons likely that we've only had one active case, which we quickly isolated and has fully recovered.
Yeah. Well, and another thing, too, about the state mandate that's kind of important, because there have been people that have raised, civil rights or constitutional issues about making people take tests, and there isn't an actual requirement that you have to test. It's if you want to not have to quarantine, right?
That's right. It just gives you alternatives. And actually, interesting that you mentioned the civil rights. That was a fairly lengthy conversation from the council meeting yesterday. One of the correspondence letters kind of touched on that. And one of the councilmen gave a fairly lengthy response. And some of the new masking provisions and requirements were kind of interesting.
Yeah, that has continued to be very interesting as this whole thing has evolved. What was that conversation like? Well,
and I'll say that personally, it's been one of the items that I've had some negative feedback on, and I get it. They're uncomfortable. We're not used to it. It's not a cultural thing for the U.S. And it periodically comes up at the council table and elsewhere. Why do we have this mask requirement in place? And there's been a lot of confusion early on. The CDC, initially indicated we don't recommend to the public that they wear them. And that again was because the public hasn't been trained to wear them, because it can actually have some downsides in terms of risk and spread if you don't use them properly. But then they realized that for this virus and this pandemic, they were seeing repeated evidence. Now I think that it was mentioned up to 170 separate studies that all indicated that masking is very effective for the coronavirus. So the CDC eventually adopted that recommendation, and just recently the World Health Organization. Now we have a big, huge petition in front of the governor by over 200 healthcare workers in the state, basically begging the governor to put a statewide mask mandate in place. So again, there's that, civil liberties piece, which, I understand and support, free choice. However, they have proven effective. We do have a local rule in place. it's only, it's most effective indoors. If you keep a mask around your neck and just pop it up onto your face when you're actually in a place of business or passing or working in close proximity to someone that you need to wear it. If you add all that up in a day, and I've kind of done a little bit of timing, for me it ends up being 5 to 10 minutes of total mask time. So I just don't think it's asking too much given the positive outcomes that we've experienced and now the big uptick in cases that we're seeing as we relax some of these rules.
Yeah, now that's another good point. I mean, you have contact with the governor and people like Doctors Inc. and state officials. We have been having more double-digit days, which prior to when that started, the governor at least seemed to say was an expected outcome of opening things. What's been the mood among, say, other state and city leaders that you've spoken with as these numbers grow?
I think we're pretty consistently sharing some of the same thoughts. We're very concerned about relaxed rules and relaxed behaviors, more importantly, resulting in rapid growth and ultimately doing what we've been trying to avoid, which is getting into critical care facilities, getting into hospitals, impacting our healthcare workers and their ability to provide service right when they have high case counts coming in, and then attacking the elderly and at-risk, which just really don't have a defense against this virus. So, again, the responsibility is passed from strict rules to the business plans and personal behaviors that protect against the virus. And we are seeing an uptick. We have the highest current case count in the state, which means it's much more likely that traveling within the state can spread it around the state and bring it into our community. Locally, our big concern is that our sailing season is just on the cusp of starting. So more and more of a completely different group of workers and crews and support businesses and staff are starting to come in and swell our numbers in the community, even as we relax travel rules. And I know personally that some of the sports fishermen and guides and vacationers are starting to come, which is all great news for our businesses and economy. But again, we have to wear the masks when we're in close proximity, wash our hands, distance, and we'll weather this thing great.
Well, and when you're talking about the commercial fishing industry, this gets back to the essential worker thing. All of those, and even though the travel restrictions, which was basically for visitors and residents trying to get back home, but for cannery workers, for commercial fishermen that were supposed to be working under their plans, the states, the change to the out-of-state travel mandate isn't really supposed to change any of those essential work plans, right?
That's right. And so just a reminder, especially our ambassadors got some training this week with our medical staff, so they're ready for these new provisions as they go into effect this morning. And that's one of the things you have to remember. There are people with health issues that are exempt from wearing the masks. It's been a while since we mentioned that, and it's also within the business's responsibility and rules on whether or not they have to have a test and be carrying a test voucher with them as they travel, because they could have a letter from their processor, or they could be fishing for a processor where they've adopted the processor's plan and are following that, which most likely has would have more strict provisions than the state and local.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the case. We'll single out Trident again because they're the ones that have been the most public with their plan. The changes to Mandate 10 don't mean that, Trident, for example, is going to change anything that they have pledged to do with their workers coming in terms of quarantining them before they come in or after, or whichever it was, and testing and all of the stuff that they have talked about. I mean, we can presume a lot of that's going to stay in place?
Yes, absolutely. There are provisions for modifying plans, but again, our processors have been so open and consistent, and they've asked us when they needed assistance. So just like the today, this afternoon, might be a good time to remind that Ocean Beauty will be out at Sheridan Glacier having a picnic with their employees, getting them some air and some space, and help to work off some of the jitters that normally might express themselves in town behaviors.
So that's today out at Sheridan Glacier, and again, they're transporting their own people in their own vehicles and still maintaining their isolation to a great extent, and I expect we'll be very careful to minimize any interaction with anybody else that's out there.
Absolutely, and thanks to you and your communications. Anybody going out, it's a beautiful sunny day this morning, and as we look for good weather, if people are going out to recreate, they can know that Sheridan Glacier would be the one to avoid today as the processors are out there picnicking.
Okay. Well, anything else before we wrap it up here for today?
I think kind of the final word for today is just be respectful. I've heard rumors. I haven't seen it myself. I've heard rumors of people who are wearing masks kind of being taunted and jeered at. And even confronted to some extent. And then on the other hand, there are those who do have medical issues and can't wear masks and so forth that have kind of been harassed a little bit. And I think it's just important to remember that we do have some personal choices. There are unique circumstances, and around the recent protests and so forth, which I participated here in Cordova. It was very respectful and really underscored that everybody should treat each other respectfully. And, that's I think, a good parting thought for today.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And thanks for sharing that. I hope people will take that advice, because that's good advice no matter what the particulars of a situation, politics, just to try to not be one of those that's going to smack people upside the head who aren't doing things exactly the way you think it should be done. Mayor Koplin, thank you very much for joining in.
Thanks.
Okay, we appreciate Mayor Koplin being with us, and as promised, we've got an update from Parks and Rec. Some of you may have seen this online, but we wanted to share it with you here. It says the P&R department has been planning to reopen the gym alongside private and public gyms across the state and the nation. For this reason, it has been extremely challenging to get our hands on the equipment and safeguards that we feel we need to adequately serve the number of pass holders that we have. We do have items on the way, but they will take longer than anticipated to get here. We will not be opening the gym to the public or entering into the facility usage agreements for private groups as anticipated next week. We will, however, be opening the Bob Corn Memorial Pool to lap swimming because a single lane can be scheduled by individuals and used for other forms of aquatic therapy. That'll start Wednesday, June 17th. And they plan to publish the mitigation plan for pool use by close of business next Monday, June 15th. They say, we appreciate your patience, Cordova. Stay positive. We look forward to serving you soon. If you have any questions about that, I'm sure they can be directed to Parks and Rec. Don't forget the phone lines available for you, 424-INFO and 424-WELL. 424-WELL is a recorded message. 424-INFO, you get to talk to somebody, ask questions, share concerns, and so forth. We will continue to serve you weekdays in the 1 p.m., 5 p.m., and 8 p.m. hours with daily briefings on KLAM and KCDV, and get them on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cordova TV. Regular programming continues next. Thanks for tuning in.